welcome everyone. Really excited about this webcast. You know, the AI factor, it's such an important topic that many businesses are facing today, and there's just this incredible sort of discussion around it and how does it apply to me. So we're going to really break down that topic today, and I'm really excited to introduce Asha Saxena. Asha and I have known each other for quite some time, and she wrote a great book called The AI Factor: How to Apply AI and Use Big Data to Grow Your Business Exponentially. So Asha started her career back in the 90s, computer science engineer, and embarked on this big technology journey and became an entrepreneur. I know your focus again was at the early stages with data management and e-commerce. However, you obviously built this big, strong foundation in technology and as well data solutions. And in those days, there was a lot of advancement. Of course, that was at the almost the beginning of the internet, but pretty close to the same point where the industry was changing quite rapidly. And here we are today in a different time period, but yet the industry is expanding and changing quite substantially. I know that you've really, moved your career, of course, more towards data analytics and AI, and now big data and where things are going. I know you joined us as a CEO coach a few years back and been a part of our organization. Branched off, and you're really deeply related to AI and finance and so I know you're focused in this area. So the passion though that you have for this topic is quite significant. We know that you really worked hard on helping clients with growing and as well really formalizing their strategy, and then how do you actually apply that? So real practical experience and real practical advice in your book, and quite frankly, I enjoyed reading your book. It was a great read. I spent a lot of time over last week really just digging into the topic and understanding a lot of what you're discussing. So we'll break a little bit of that down today, no doubt. So I know, Asha, as well, you're a guest speaker at our upcoming summit, 2024 summit at the Fountainville in Miami in April. Talk a little bit about that. But anyways, welcome to the show. Very much excited about our conversation today, Asha. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Randy. I'm really excited. First of all, I have to say that even though I started my career as an engineer and spent 30 years building technology companies, but being a part of CEO coaching as a partner was really rewarding because I got to use the skills I learned as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, being able to exit companies and really share it with the CEOs who are listening and also who are our clients. Really rewarding to see the impact we as partners can have with these companies and really share tangible tactical tips with the CEOs to make sure that they can continue on the path of growth. So just a really rewarding time. I'm really excited to be at the summit in April next year, where not only I'll be able to talk about my learnings, what I've written in the book, but also be able to share with the CEOs who are attending what they could do and how they are succeeding and where they're getting stuck. So really have real conversation at the summit to make sure that the companies we coach or companies who are engaged can continue on this path of growth and not miss out. It's not just sitting on the sideline and waiting to jump into technology.
So let's kind of jump right into the heart of the book and some of the practical approaches. Obviously, there's quite an emphasis you put on some of these frameworks that you have in the book, and I particularly like sort of that practical approach because whether you're first starting in the AI journey or you're down the road in the AI journey, the book has applications for sort of where you are in the journey. But some of the initial approaches, really balance that competency that's required and some of the initial things that are structured. You obviously wrote the book with those frameworks in mind. Why did you start there, and how does that actually, how has that been helpful, at least in as you've rolled the book out and been working with clients?
Great question, because really when we are in the weeds, we are working and implementing these technologies, we forget about thinking about how do you make it easy. As a technologist, a lot of engineers think that, we get it, so the business user should get it too. As I was coaching, what I realized is that a lot of businesses kind of get stuck in not knowing when they're using technology, how to. It's a big concept. When you talk about artificial intelligence, I have to say that November 2022 was really, the November 30th was really remarkable because OpenAI, when they launched ChatGPT, within 5 days, they had million users. And nothing like that has happened. Generative AI showed a new face of AI to the world like never before. Even though we worked with mathematical models all our life, right? I'm sure our listeners are using these models in finance and looking at their sales and marketing metrics, right? So data analytics has been around and building machine learning and the models has been around for a while. But the way generative AI, the large language model using natural language processing to be able to communicate in a common man's language is something new. We
Yeah.
have been engaged with Alexa and Siri, but really having ChatGPT giving us answers and solving problems or taking the bar exam and exceeding in bar exam is something new to all of us. And then this whole buzz came up, artificial intelligence. What is it? So before we even get started, it's really important to have a baseline of what artificial intelligence is, which is when machines can act like humans, when machines have the intelligence to problem solve like humans, is artificial intelligence. And there was a whole fear. So, I engage with a lot of leaders where they're questioning, is it going to be harmful? How should we engage with it? And how do we really jump in to take advantage of it? And there are three stages of artificial intelligence. The first one is artificial narrow intelligence. This is the world where we live in, where we're working with chatbots or we have this technology that can engage with us. So it's a machine learning. Machine learns from the data you feed in. And it's really important to understand that because and the value of data, and I'm sure we'll touch upon the data aspect, but machine learns from the data we feed in. And then the next level is the artificial general intelligence, where the machine becomes intelligent enough. So machine is intelligent as humans are. And then the last stage is the artificial super intelligence. That's where when the consciousness comes in. And when you hear Elon Musk saying, let's pause AI for 6 months, that's what they're referring to is the fear of artificial super intelligence. But what
let me just interrupt you for 1 second because I read, of course, in your book the AI hierarchy, right, going from artificial intelligence, machine learning into deep learning. But there's such an evolution and things are moving so quickly. And I know one of the general fears, and we hear it quite often, is what if I invest in AI now? By the time I'm done, it'll advance so much it may have neutralized anything I invested and I've now wasted my money. How do people are having trouble getting around AI, let alone machine learning and deep learning. So what would you recommend to help them accelerate quicker or make some of those decisions on investments that actually will benefit their business? And how do they look at some of that stuff? There's lots of freeware out there, but there's also an element where you need to keep up with the technology, particularly if you're in an industry that's really succumbing to these big changes. But what would be some of your top recommendations about how to treat it in the sense of investment?
And you know what? I had to tell, there's an answer in your question. You asked me earlier, why did you think about the framework? This is the exact reason why I thought about the framework. The question which you asked is, where do we start? How, the technology is changing so fast. And I then say, let's look at the frameworks. It's really about what problem are you solving? If you don't know what problem you're solving and where do you really stand, it's very hard to get started because then you get really confusing. Should I start in sales or marketing? Should I buy or build myself? So all those questions comes into the place. So in the book, I try to make it simple. I created 4-step process and I've given frameworks at each level. Technology is changing fast and technology is going to constantly keep changing. Does that mean you sit on the sideline and wait for the best because the best will keep changing every year, right? So how do you really get started? And the very first framework I talk about is a 4-quadrant. I talk about really assess where you are in your business, where in the life cycle of the business you are, and where do you want to get started. And I talk about the 4-quadrant where I say, think about, how fast do you want to grow and what is your risk capacity. And I talk about you can assess your business and say, we are optimizer where we are really focusing on cutting costs or increasing efficiency. We just want to focus on where can we look at processes and really take advantage of reducing cost or increasing efficiency. A great example for that would be RPA, robotic process automation. A lot of organizations will say if it's a manual work where I have to go through parse the resumes or look at my database and send out emails to my prospects, it's a manual process. Can I create, use a technology like RPA, which is, really the bot traces your processes, or inventory in manufacturing is a great example where RPA used a lot, is where the bot will trace your actions and automate the whole process so that you don't have to do it manually. I love when they say technology is really created to make human life easier, right? That's what always the technology from the history has been created. And that's what AI does. So think about, are you in the phase of optimizer? Or you're an innovator where you want to launch new products and you say, I want to understand what the market needs are. I want to do a social AI experiment to understand which products sell better and continue growing and launching new products. And the next quadrant talks about the extender. Do I understand my market and I want to focus on just increasing my market because I'm focusing on sales initiatives? Or am I a disruptor where I'm a multiplier? I want to really break the business model I'm in and I want to focus on being a multiplier. So those are the 4 quadrants where you need to get started with.
So let's take this into a case study. You're an adjunct professor at Columbia, so you'd appreciate the learning with case studies. Give us, up with no names, of course, maybe just industries or something, but could you give us like an in the trenches story of a company that you dealt with? And if it was a small to medium-sized enterprise, that'd be great. I know you work with lots of big companies, but let's take it to the small, medium-sized company and give me a quick story, like an in the trenches story of where you started and how you got to the other side and what that really did for that business.
So, I'm so glad you asked that because I'm going to talk about one of my clients at CEO Coaching called Chili. They've been our client for now over 3 years. And when I started with them, they had HR software. And through our journey, we have been implementing AI throughout different product ranges, and just an excellent, excellent HR AI company. And they've had such a great success. I mean, when you talk about satisfaction as a partner, Randy, a company like Chili has really grown with us tremendously. And what they did is that their software looks at the HR life cycle. So when you're trying to recruit a candidate, they use natural language processing and artificial intelligence to parse the resumes, they have a taxonomy where identify the right skills of the candidate to match the job description. They use this for being an innovator. They are an innovator in their industry to launch new products. They've launched several products to improve their software. They're a technology company, but to improve their software offering, they've launched new products. And another thing what you could do is that even if you're an innovator, you also can be an extender because they launch new products and get market share. And so you could be an optimizer trying to cut costs, like you're using a HubSpot, or you use the HubSpot use a chat GPT. The chat bots. You can use chat bots to reduce your cost because you don't have to have customer service. And but you can also upsell in that and say, what about this product or that product? So a lot of product companies use chatbot to upsell and resell, engage with the consumer. Chatbots are getting better day by day now to really engage with the consumer. So there are a lot of small businesses who can jump in and start using AI pretty quickly because they can use technology. And chatbots are easy to implement. You can actually have a plugin for chatbot in your website and with very low cost, start using AI within your business.
Asha, we're getting lots of questions coming in, and obviously this is striking a chord. I'd like to maybe unpack it a little bit more on the quadrant side, because you've referenced it a couple of times here, but folks that haven't read your book may not understand it. So let me take it down a level on the question here. So I think on page 16 and 86, you got the quadrant, and it's the extender, the multiplier, the optimizer, and the innovator. I know it's driven by risk and growth are the sort of 2 axes there. But if I was an optimizer company, which means I'm more risk adverse, I'm well established, right? I'm focused on bottom line profitability, cost cutting, optimizing, typical sort of persona, I would say, for many companies. But now you're in a market that's being hugely dominated by AI, and you've got competitors that are showing up with throwing a shingle up and using AI and getting ahead of you in certain areas of the market. How does a company move from being a historical optimizer and move into being, even if they just went up the growth curve a little bit and said, hey, look, I want to be an extender? What would be those steps that they do? What would you suggest for a company like that wants to move up the pyramid here a little bit farther?
So, I want to go back to a couple of examples. I want to give you some example which will, makes more sense if I'm telling a story. So when you're thinking about being an optimizer, you're really thinking about how can I cut costs or increase efficiencies. And I'm just going to take the example of a chatbot. The makeup company Kiehl, and they're used in a lot of beauty product companies. They're using it a lot because there's virtual makeup products now. So you can try your makeup on virtual screens, and it's just the technology is getting better every day. So a company like Kiehl uses a chatbot. They were just optimizing. They were saying, let's cut the cost of the human engagement, and we're going to get this digital agent who's going to communicate with the consumer. But as they started using the chatbot, they realized they can have this technology of facial recognition, and they can see, or the technology, the app can actually see the dark spot or irregular skin tones, and recommend a lotion that would help them to clear their skin. So now they're using the technology to upsell and be the extender. Now, when they're doing that, they're also collecting data, and data is such an important piece, because as nobody starts with saying I have all the right data, but as Kiehl is offering these new products about the skincare, they're collecting the data, and they can now become an innovator to launch a new product because they have enough data, and data from the real customers who are using their products to give them the feedback. You can now become an innovator. So even if you start at optimizer or as an innovator, you need to start your journey. That's the big point. You need to start collecting the data from your consumers. And if you don't collect the data from your consumer and you're sitting on the sideline, you're going to miss the bus. So the important part is about getting started,
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the point about data, because a lot of companies, a bit fearful because they didn't really capture a lot of data well in the past. They don't know really truly the voice of client, and then as well what the client is thinking, and then how to bring information to advance them, help them, and get them to a buying position that really favors what they're offering, because they're using the cues from the client and the interaction that's happening, of course, to how the machine's learning the behaviors of these prospective clients. How do you separate between, I've got to collect data going forward that's valuable, but I also have a bunch of historic data. I don't know if it's really valuable or if it could potentially push me into a direction that I don't want to go, because I need to almost start fresh in the same token. How do you deal with the history, and how do you position yourself for the future, just as it relates to data?
So when you think about data, so data management, this is a whole big field, right? We could spend the whole hour on just data management and really thinking about, is your data accessible? Do you have the access to the data which you need? The security is really critical. The quality of data, do you have the good quality data? And then really thinking about the governance of the data. So data management is a huge field, but what I really, for the small businesses, and you could say, oh, it's a small business, they don't need a lot of data. It's about the data you've collected, and the data you actually need. It always starts with a question. I always say it's not about the answers, it's about the question. Are you asking the right question? Because the question gives you the answer or leads you to the right path. So you may have the data which you're collecting, and it may be relevant or not relevant. You will not know if that's relevant unless you ask the question. So once you say, for my business, I need to measure which customer in this region are focused on blue jeans. And now if you have a good question, a relevant question to your product, now you can go back into your data and say, do I have the data? Do I have the right data? Is it the quality of the data is something which I can trust or not? Is it governed properly? Is it secure? Are we following the GDPR if we're in financial, or you are in Europe, you have a global company? Are we masking the data appropriately when we have to mask our data? And do we know who owns the data within my organization? Because a lot of time the finance is siloed, and supply chain is siloed, and marketing. So do I know where the data is stored, and do I have access to the data, or do I need to go out and buy the data set to be able to create the right metrics for my right results, or build the right model to give me the right results? So it's really thinking about, it's not about what you have, it's about what question are you asking, and then going back and finding out, where is my data sitting and what is the purpose? A lot of times, people will ask me, do I have, Asha, I want to get started, but I don't get the buy-in from my leaders. How do I get the buy-in? It's always about the value. If you don't produce the value from the data set or the models or any application, any technology, if you are not getting the value, it's going to sit on the shelf. Listen, I was a programmer in all my 90s and early 2000s, I built a consulting firm, and we would go out and build these amazing softwares on CRM and ERP and work on these client server technologies, and these products will end up sitting on the shelves. It was so frustrating as an engineer, and I'm sure people who are listening, and if they are technologists, they know what I'm talking about, because it gets shelved, the technology gets shelved because the adoption is hard. Adoption to a technology is not easy. So it is so important that you are providing the value, asking the right question, and then thinking about, where do I get the data from? And then I can spend time on all the things you need to make sure the data readiness, the framework which I talk about, is really critical.
And Asha, one of the questions that came in, which I think is really on point with what you're talking about, the question is about prioritization, right? Like, not everybody has a CIO or a CTO, but yet they really need to, get conscripting the whole organization into the strategy to some degree, get collaboration and kind of bring it together. But where do they, like, on the order of prioritization, is data the big start point, or what would you say from a priority standpoint, folks should really think about? What is step one?
I love that question, because a lot of the companies I coach, and especially the technologists I coach, they would say to me, Asha, we are just getting loaded by this request. So many people are sending us requests, we don't even know where to start from. So when you talk about prioritization, it's really important. In life, prioritization is important, right? But when you're working with AI, because it can get so complex and confusing, it is so important to figure out about the prioritization. I love that you remember the page number on my book. I don't remember the page number, but there is a concept on the third topic I talk about, is the power zone. I talk about in the book about the power zone, and in the book I say that really, and as I was saying earlier, it's really thinking about, what question are you asking, what problem are you solving, and is it the biggest problem, is it aligned to the strategy? And I love what you guys do, Randy. We do the strategy session. Strategy session is such a critical element of any business, but AI strategy becomes really important right after that. So as you're running your strategy session, you need to think about, where is my AI strategy going to fall? Now, AI strategy also includes the data strategy. So thinking about, what problem is my problem, big problem, and is it aligned to my business strategy? The top 3 goals which we discussed in our planning session, is that aligned to what I wanted to achieve as a whole, as a company? And then those initiatives are the only one you want to jumpstart with. Is it, first of all, does it give you the highest impact? And second, is it easy to execute? You don't want to, get trapped in a hole where you feel like, oh my God, even though this is a high priority, but it's going to take me 18 months to launch. So you want to focus on the high value, quick implementation. That's what you really want to focus on. And then you look at your power zone and say, what is the biggest problem? Is it aligned to my business strategy and business goals? Does it give me the value? Is it providing me the highest value? And do I have the data which I can trust to be able to implement the solution? Is it easy to implement? So that's really, really important. I also give an equation in the book, which talks about the data value and the business value. I call it a data performance index, and talk about the data value and the business value that gives you the impact on the value. So just again, as you asked me, why do you have these frameworks? It's really to make sure that it's easy for people who are non-technical to be able to take these concepts and implement in their own business.
You know, you think about it, every business has its own challenges within its sector, and those challenges are different from sector to sector. I'm sure professional services are going to be a little bit different than manufacturing as it relates to AI and to big data. Does your approach and what are some of the things that you start with? Because you're not going to be an industry expert in every industry, obviously, but you're an industry expert as it relates to AI. What's the bridge between how is it applied in my industry and what's going to get me farther faster versus AI technology understanding? How do you bridge that gap with your clients?
So, I talk about two things. So, from the book, I created this workbook, and the two streams of workshops I talk about. One is the masters, and the other is the practitioner. As a practitioner, when you're implementing within your organization, it's important to understand the concept. So if you're not somebody who's a technologist who's trying to implement, the practitioners need to understand the basic concept, because if you don't understand how to use AI, they say, oh, the fear of losing jobs. When they talk about AI, they say, oh, there'll be a lot of job displacements because of AI. And I always say that there'll be also job creations. So if you understand AI and know how to use AI, you will be somebody they'll be looking to hire, because you are somebody who understand how to. So the whole workshop is around practitioner. So to learn about how to use AI effectively and understand the terms and terminologies and concepts. So when you are playing with the technology, you understand how to use it. And the other, the path is about masters workshop, which we run. And masters workshop is really about understanding how to build an AI strategy and AI roadmap. You don't need to be a technologist. As the management, top management, your C-suite should understand how the AI strategy is mapped to your business strategy. Very critical, because the problems and the effectiveness of technology starts from the top. If the business is not aligned to what you want to implement in AI, and you're not measuring the value, your resources are going to get wasted. Not just the financial resources, but your people and time will get wasted. So really critical that your alignment of your business strategy and AI strategy starts from the very beginning, from the very top. And I think that's really where the whole master's program starts, to make sure that the C-suite and the leaders understand how to implement AI strategy for the effective use.
I know that you're running breakouts at our summit next April, and a lot of that talk is going to get really unpacked in there. How does a company really take, I think you talked about it in your book about the collaboration that's required here, because AI isn't the strategy from one person in the C-suite. It's really a strategy of the organization, and you got to conscript everybody into the direction, because though it isn't your strategy, AI is not your strategy, it's a complement to your strategy. It has to help you get farther, deeper, better, not in a strategy in and of itself. So there's this kind of bridge that it's got to be built, and it's really a collaborative one with everybody in the organization. But how does a company go about getting their workforce really prepared to leverage AI and big data, and how does that really get unpacked to bring that sense of collegialness and teamwork within the organization?
So in the book, I talk about the data. In data readiness, there are 4 elements. The first is the strategic objective. So when you start with your AI, you want to make sure that you're aligned, and that's what I was talking about. As masters, you are aligned with the business strategy. You want to make sure that there is, when you're thinking about having clear objective, financial impact, operational effectiveness, and strategic alignment. Really important that executives are engaged. Then I talk about the data governance, the data management, right? We spoke about the security, ownership, accessibility, quality. And then what you're talking about is the third element, which is the engagement. Usage, literacy, culture, and the enterprise engagement. So that's the third element in the readiness, which I talk about. And it is so critical. I mean, if in silo executives are engaged and they don't get the enterprise engaged, it's going to be always a challenge. And so I emphasize on the usage, are we using the technology effectively? So let's say if we launch in marketing and we say, you know what, we want to launch a chat GPT version to write our content for marketing, or I want to use, Nutella did a really great example, and these examples pop in my head as I talk about these frameworks. Nutella did a great campaign on marketing where they actually used the AI to design their labels in Italy. And they understood what the market wanted from social media and what colors resonate with Italians. And within the first week, 7 million jars were sold because they understood, they used the AI to understand their consumer and design the graphic based on what the consumer needed. So it's about usage.
I love this point because so often companies get the voice of the client from the salespeople, and the salespeople get the voice of the client from the procurement guy on the other side of the table, and that's not always what their ultimate clients are of the company you're selling to if you're doing a B2B transaction. So understanding from the beginning to the end the needs and the voice of the customer, and not just buying what you're hearing with your own sort of biases in mind because you've been in maybe that industry for a long time, but getting the raw data and letting that raw data tell you what's actually needed. I love your point because I think we've far too long, relied upon, the impressions of a few to be an extrapolation of the actual impressions of the whole, which is the ultimate customers that we're selling to.
I love that point because an AI can help you get the voice of your customer much easier than ever before. Before it would be like, I don't know what the data tells me. Oh my God, I have to go buy the data. Now you have AI to go out and look at the social data sets to be able to give you a response, which is a lot more effective than trying to guess the work, right? Instead of just guessing what my salespeople are telling me or what I think or I assume that the market needs. Now you have a tangible, result to be able to take the market in the right direction. So I think to go back to your question, I think enterprise engagement is really critical, Randy, and that's why I said there are two paths. One is master and the other is practitioner. But really what I've seen, I've worked with Fortune 1000 companies as a technologist, and what I've seen is that usage really depends upon literacy and culture. If you don't have a culture within your organization where you're depending on the technology to give you, and you're still stuck doing manual, labor, then it is very hard because people then get insecure with, using technology or are just fearful of using technology. So it's really the culture and literacy. Data and this AI literacy becomes really important to show and encourage your team to start using, and start small. Start with something small which is easy to implement and can show you the value for your teams and your employees. And that's the only time you can transform. And then the last element I talk about is transformation, is that can you adapt this technology? Can you repeat what you build and create scalability? I love Jim Collins' book, and I know that a lot of the partners recommend Jim Collins' book over and over. And with a lot of my companies, I used to do the business flywheel, and I used to say, what's your flywheel? And tell me what your, secret sauce is, and how can you make it bigger, faster, do it right? And in AI, the flywheel effect is really, really critical because it's all about the models. You feed the model and you give a reinforcement to the model and you say, this is correct, this is wrong. And then you give the data back into the model. So AI flywheel is really critical to create the transformation within your organization. You start something small and you repeat it and you make sure that you can go faster.
Yeah, I like that concept for sure. So, even back to the voice of customer idea that you just were talking about, it's really like take one thing and do that one thing really well and apply AI in there, and then take the next journey as you're making your way towards your flywheel and creating that effect in the business. But we coach 500 plus companies. I know you've been one of our AI experts helping with the application of a lot of these strategies and playbooks. What would you say are some of the most common misconceptions, or let's call it pitfalls, that businesses fall into when they get into this topic that you kind of come in with your frameworks and kind of really help them straighten out? What are those pitfalls that you find most common?
So I feel like the very first thing which I find is that, first of all, I see that a lot of clients are fearful. They don't know where to start. So that's why the framework is really important. The second thing I see is that it sits in one functional area only. So let's say if the sale or the marketing teams are using it because they can write content, they just get stuck there, and then it doesn't get transformed into other functional areas. The third thing is that exchange of knowledge. So when you're doing something right, people are very humble or don't want to brag about it. So if one division is doing well with technology, they don't talk about it to the other division, so the other people don't learn or can't really use. So as a CEO, you want to make sure that if one division is using technology or using an AI tool, make sure that the other teams are benefiting from it too. So I feel like that's where they get stuck. The other is that, oh, the data which we are feeding is not good. The data we've collected is not good. So this doesn't work, So a lot of times you get stuck because your data management or your data availability is not accurate. So a lot of times organization gets stuck with that. Now, I always say when you get stuck, instead of getting stalling or not moving, a lot of times the fear or the trust can cause the ability not to move. And so I think it's really important that even if it's not accurate, keep moving, because that's the only way for you to reiterate and fix what you built. If you don't try it, you can't fix it.
Right. How does data privacy and some of the security issues around data sort of play into that? Because that would be maybe not a pitfall, but certainly a fear that rises out that, how do I make sure that the data I am collecting is secure? How do I prevent myself from hackers or cyber, attacks? How does data security and cybersecurity sort of play into this?
See, data security is really critical. So when you're building, it really becomes really important. The whole revolution around ethical and responsible AI talks about doing it right, making sure that you are keeping the privacy of the people. You're transparent on, if you are going to use the data, you announce it that you're going to use the data of the consumer. So it becomes really critical that you are following the steps, the checklist of responsible and ethical AI. The second piece is that, oh my God, if I'm putting the data out, does my financials or my customer data or my product data gets open in public? And that's why it's important to work with the practitioners, the security softwares and companies who provide the security to make sure that you double and triple check that the data which you're using for your models doesn't become available for the market, or your data is not getting sold, or you're not getting ransomware attacks in your organization. So it's really important that you use the trusted advisors, the security advisors, and use the trusted software products to make sure that that happens. Even in our organization, right, in CEO Coaching International, we get taught how to write our emails and don't click on these emails. We are getting literacy, as I talk about in my third element. We are getting the technology literacy training constantly. So it doesn't matter how big or small you are as an organization. When you are on internet or you are using emails, you have to think about the security of your data, no matter what stage of the organization you are. And then when you're working with the models, you mask the data. It's important, especially if you're in healthcare, you have to make sure that the HIPAA rules are compliant as you're using the technologies. So you want to make sure that you're following the process that's required based upon the industry you are in. In financial services, there are different kind of regulation. Healthcare, there's different kind of regulation. In higher ed, there's different kind of regulation. And when you think about the use cases, Randy, there are such great use cases of AI in healthcare and AI and education. I'm most excited about. I can talk about the healthcare cases after cases. There's a great technology software company called Replica. And Replica became really popular during COVID because it was a companion, AI companion. So when people were lonely and they're dealing with mental issues, mental health issues, and they don't have anyone to talk to, AI companion will hold a conversation with you. And I was listening to the story which was on CBS, and it was a great story because the journalist is reporting on this AI companion, and she becomes friend with this chatbot. And the companion, she names the companion Mike, and as she goes for a run on the Hudson Yards, the Hudson River in New York City, she talks to her companion, and she was saying, like, my companion remembered, that I had a headache last night, and he would ask me, how are you feeling today? Or he'll say, let me cheer you up and send you the music you like. I found a new music. So these cases, I mean, think about how AI can truly benefit and help us in our healthcare. Um,
Yeah, no, healthcare has been, and we had a couple questions from the healthcare industry here because there is a lot of fatigue and burnout that's taken place with nurses and a lot of medical staff, and it has been one of those sort of areas where mental health, some of the challenges in businesses currently could be helped and advanced by AI. If I was, you mentioned it earlier, about 365 days ago, ChatGPT hit the world, November of last year, and natural language processing, ChatGPT, a lot of these things have really changed a lot, and they've created new threats, right? I'm sure you're an adjunct professor, so you probably are constantly making sure those papers aren't written from a ChatGPT, that they're actually not, delving in plagiarism or just cut and pasting their papers. The legal profession is facing this too. A lot of people want to defend themselves, and they're using ChatGPT and case law to try and figure out how to position their arguments. So there's been industries that have come under significant scrutiny. But how does ChatGPT or NLP, how does it apply to business today, an everyday business? What would you feel like if there was a start point? That's probably one of those. What would be the best area to at least take those technologies that are now almost a year old and actually use them in business today?
First of all, I want to go back to the ChatGPT fear of students writing the papers. And I get asked that question constantly as a professor. What do you think about that? And I always say ChatGPT is a resource, right? When you do you give a prompt, you still have, and you get an answer, you still have to customize it. You still have to use your, intelligence to see what do I really want to say and how do I want to, if I'm creating a content for my social media, I still have to personalize that to make sure that it's my voice. So when I'm talking to my students, I'm always saying, give me the sources. ChatGPT could be one of your sources, but tell me all the sources you went to get the answers from your for your paper. Similarly, in the business, I think we are still at the stage where AI needs human assistance. When you're using in your business ChatGPT for content creation or writing emails or finding an answer or doing your research, it is one of the sources, and it should be used by organization to make sure that you can expedite your answers and your results. There's also, Microsoft announced Copilot, and Copilot, I don't know if you guys have seen the demo. Copilot has an amazing demo on the CRM, the Dynamics 365, where the the AI recognizes which customers you haven't touched so far. It goes and finds the customer and says, oh, you still have to follow up. They are waiting for your answer. So the AI in CRM, imagine having a CRM that can help you stay on top of your clients and understand what the consumer needs. These technologies are going to become a lot more common for our small businesses to start tapping into. So I would highly recommend anyone who's listening to it to pick one area within their organization and launch with, if it's ChatGPT, if it's with Copilot, or it's with Dolly for your graphics. So you can use any of the software which are available right now to jumpstart on any of, is it marketing, sales, RPA? It could be for your manufacturing, operational optimization. Just starting is important, even if it's a small start. And encouraging. I mean, we have another client, Fred Quesetto, from our CEO Coaching International, and he has a large manufacturing business, distribution business, and it's a global business. He ran a workshop with me for his entire team, and went back and he forced each division to come back with saying, where do you sit? Are you an extender optimizer? And what use cases are you going to launch for AI? I mean, it's a great idea to go back into your organization and do AI ideathon, and say, give me all your ideas, write down all your ideas, and we will pick the best idea to launch that to get the highest value with a quick implementation. Estee Lauder did a AI ideathon, and they got over 100, and people had to submit their videos, 3 minutes video of what is your idea to use AI. And they launched the top 3, top 5 ideas to just get started in the organization. And so for our CEOs who are listening, that's the best way to get started and engage the entire organization, because now the divisions from different groups know what AI application they would want to start and launch. And then as a leader, you decide which one is easy to launch.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Asha, I think I've woven in most of the questions from the audience through the course of our discussion, but there's a couple of questions I didn't ask, and so maybe we can just kind of move to the live Q&A. If anybody has a specific question, please text that in to us, and I'll try and get that in here before we close out. But one question that came in was, how do I identify existing global opportunities for profit and social enterprise spaces? What are those steps that I need to take to identify these opportunities?
I always say start from where you are. So if you are in a beauty industry, think about what can be revolutionized. So what is the problem you're trying to solve? Instead of saying, and then in that section, you narrow down and you say, where is the opportunity in that field? And it's really thinking about where and how you can solve that problem. An organization which is called Writer, the founder is May Habib, and she partnered with L'Oreal. She started the organization in 2020, and it was a Writer. It was a chat GPT for corporations. And what it does is that it creates a marketing content to personalize for your consumer. Her valuation is $400 million right now. Started to, less than 3 years ago. And she got $100 million in funding. And if you really think about it, you would say, oh, maybe it's not as great idea, and maybe it's not the right globalization opportunity, but it's really thinking about where you're good at. Think about which field you are in, and can you narrow focus and become the best in that, and jump in. I think using AI is the way to go right now to emphasize in either you can extend your market, create new products, or become a multiplier.
Excellent, excellent. The next question was around manufacturing and machine learning. And the question is, how do I look at this? It sounds like by the nature of the question, they got quite a bit of robotics and automated equipment on their floor. How do they take machine learning and use it to help improve the performance on the shop floor in their manufacturing setting?
I'm going to give you another example. A YPO company I work with, and they do large construction in Middle East, and these are tall buildings they are building in construction, and they have robotics in all their machines. So this is a crane operator who goes onto the crane to operate in the high-rise buildings. And the biggest problem was that these crane operators work long hours and get tired and can have accidents. So now what it does is the crane operators have this device within their right in front of them, where it checks the optical data. It takes how many blinks you will have to see if you're falling asleep, and the crane will stop operating. So now you're collecting the data. I mean, this is just one example from just the optical data set to be able to say, is the crane operator feeling drowsy? And think about the amount of savings. And not only you're saving a life, and you're saving all the destruction that could happen from that accident. Manufacturing is such a great place because they are robotics already and they are collecting data. It gives a lot of opportunity to be an optimizer where you're cutting costs and increasing efficiency, but also be an innovator because you're collecting data at every stage to understand what new products can I launch, or what new products can I launch just to create more efficiency or get a differentiation in the market, or how can I look at what products are selling faster, or what products are going faster, and where are they going, to understand the supply and demand to be able to become an extender. Or can I multiply and disrupt my own model because now I have enough data to collect at each step of the and manufacturing is big in Six Sigma, right? They're trying to improve every single error they're making. So they are a great place. And even though they say manufacturing doesn't change fast enough, it's a great place to start identifying opportunities at every step because you have the potential to collect so much data.
Yeah, Excellent, excellent. I'm really looking forward to your presentation at the summit. This is a big topic, AI, and then I know we've got breakouts and just really getting deep in. I know you and Peter Diamandis are really going to champion us down that road because it's such an important topic, and it's not going away. It's only how do I position myself, and what are some of those things that I really need to consider in my business to help me make sure I'm not losing ground and I'm advancing as quick as I can, but using it for good. To be able to create, complements to my strategy to help me advance, which I think is fantastic. So, thank Asha. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and your book, The AI Factor, is very thought provoking, and I really appreciated your frameworks and the practical sense of the book and how to really approach it. And my kind of 4 takeaways from today's comments and as well from the book is, at the beginning, is don't rush. You got to really get prepared properly and make sure that your company goals are clear. And then how does that actually align with AI, and how do I bring that in? It's not your purpose. The purpose of AI is to complement your purpose and help you advance your strategy. And the second one is being as well, just as you talk, is like you really need some industry input and expert input, right? So I encourage everybody to, listening to podcasts like this and attending a summit, that can really help bring good thinking, because you think about AI all day. Not everybody thinks about AI all day. So having that level of expertise in your pocket is going to be very helpful as well. And then the point about data, for sure, for me, the readiness, making sure, one, you understand what got you here is not necessarily what's going to get you there, and how that data readiness plays a role, and then being collaborative with your organization and keeping close to your market, because it's an industry that's ever changing and lots of stuff, and particularly with 2024 on the horizon, there's lots of stuff that's really important for businesses really to take this to a real practical level. So again, I want to thank you, Asha, for joining us today and providing a lot of insights, and all the best, and we'll see you in April.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing everybody in April and having this conversation in person.